This is my Laser 30. It resides in our mudroom. It's an A model, so it would put it around 99, 2000. It was an early one. Over the years, I have used it for thousands of hours when it's really cold outside, especially with a north wind. I have put a new burn chamber in it and rebuilt that one once. I had to go to a B style blower motor. The combustion motor, I figured out what bearings had to be in it and bought them and rebuilt that motor. It works, and I had no intention of replacing it. However, a few Saturdays ago when I was down at the local hardware store, I heard them talking about some of the display models that they had for various products along with the lasers, that a new employee had taken the boxes with all the other components for all of their display models and thrown them away. So this is what I ended up with: a 5 to 6 year old A model of the 300 series. It's not the 301 with the Wi-Fi, because I didn't want Wi-Fi anyway, because it's only used on occasion when it's really cold. So they offered me this model. They thought it was a 301, but it wasn't. They were trying to sell it for about $1,550. They offered it to me for $1,100 because it didn't have the exhaust, it didn't have the chimney, it didn't have any of the stuff, but I didn't need it because I had everything for a 30. Although according to people that are supposed to know, you can't fit a 300 in place of a 30 because of the problems of the placement of the kerosene and the exhaust. This is the back of a Laser 30. From the back, you'll notice the lower left is the fuel intake. The middle right is the exhaust. Now you go to a Laser 300, you see that the kerosene intake is on the lower right, and the middle upper left is the exhaust. So when they went to the 3-digit numbers for all the other models except the 300, they kept it the same. For this one, they changed everything around completely, and that was because it was as I've been told, it was a positive pressure system as opposed to a negative. So to make it work, you've got to change everything completely around. So the first thing I looked at was kerosene intake. So there is the fitting where the kerosene goes in. It's a flare, and they do not supply you with a fire valve. Well, there's the fire valve off the 30, and I figured I should be able to make that fit to the 300. Well, once I got it off, I could see, no, it's not going to. It's just a completely different style. This is the fusible link that Toyotomi will send you when you order it. If you notice, there's no way, without a bunch of adapters, you're going to make that fit onto a 300. Interesting, after you buy it, then it tells you that it won't fit. What it is the 12110 Firomatic. Well, obviously this one is not going to work. So we're going to go to Firomatic and purchase one that is more suitable for fitting on the 300. Next step was, what can I do to make the chimney work? On a 30, your exhaust goes in on the left-hand side, but with a 300, it goes in on the right-hand side. So all I did was I rotated the chimney until it was in the right orientation. That was the easy part. Next, the exhaust of the 30, if I was to just use that it would set the heater way to the right because it's so long. So initially I just cut that in half, as you see, and mounted it to the chimney and did some test fits to see if it was going to work. Now I took the back grate off so that I can see what I'm doing to match up that exhaust pipe. So there I've got it sort of aligned. When I come down here, I've got a little height difference. So to make it work without cutting a new hole and putting a new exhaust in, is I'm going to raise the heater up so that it aligns with the exhaust pipe. Shouldn't be too big a problem. And that height problem was solved with a piece of 2x4 because conveniently the height difference is 1.5 inches. So we're just field expedient to see what I could do. I just grabbed a couple pieces of 2x4, set them on the floor. You'll notice the floor has a little bit of a dip there, and the 30s are superior to the 300s in that respect because they have adjustable legs. But it looks like what Toyo did was get rid of the legs so they could make them cheaper. I think that's why you don't have a fire valve, to make them cheaper. So with the 2x4s under the unit, I put my level on, and it was good one way, and it was good the other way, and then I slid the heater onto the exhaust port. However, it was still way too far to the right. So I got the idea that it just isn't going to work as I initially thought. But while I had it in there, I got looking at the air intake. So I cut a section of the air intake tube off and screwed the 90-degree elbow back on so that it would fit as shown. Then, while I had it there, I decided, let's change gears and build the base. So I got a scrap piece of 3/4 plywood that was used from another project from the farmhouse video series, set the heater on it, marked it, then set it on it again and marked it. So I got my two pieces, got them cut, screwed together, and there it is, 2 3/4 pieces, giving you 1.5 inches, and a little test fit, and it looks pretty good because you're not going to pay any attention to it anyway. So then I started priming it with Kills. Then I got out my can of Rust-Oleum white enamel and started applying a coat of paint to the top and the bottom and the edges, and let that dry overnight in front of my big Laser 73. And when it was done the next day, I put it in position and put some shims under the left side, and it doesn't look that bad. So now, getting back to the exhaust pipe, I decided to move it over to the left as far as I could. I'm going to have to cut off another piece. So you can see I'm measuring from the factory piece on just how much I can get away with, and I ended up cutting it again. So this time it's as short as it can be, and it moves the whole heater to the left as far as I can go, and it slides into position, and it works. Now what I'm basically doing is I'm making a homemade version of the factory short elbow. Instead of buying one, I've got one. I'll just make it. So with that, it's back nearly in the middle of the distance between the door and the wall, just like the original 30. I think we're going to stand a better chance with this fire valve because it is flare, so I can go flare to flare, and then right on this end put a 90 and head over to where my kerosene line is. So what I've done so far is I removed a section of copper and cut a short section that's going to go down to the fire valve. I'll figure out the exact length when I get the heater back installed, but I had to get the heater out of there. so that I could turn that elbow. So the next step was to make a flare that's going to go on the heater itself. So that's done. Then I've just got to length the pipe. I've just got to cut it and flare to go on the fire valve. And there's the fire valve. So it's going to end up going something like that. So the way I'm measuring that short length is you've got the nut, the flare nut, little piece, and then you've got the fire valve, and this right here, that is the clamp for the tool that's going to make the flare. So I've got a little bit of clearance that should work. So with the second flare installed, now I can take the valve and tighten that down, and that's going to reside roughly like that. Well, there's the finished fuel system. I extended this pipe, used the same elbow, shortened that, made that custom piece, and if you notice, it's at a little bit of an angle. I had to remove the knob right here and then tilt it that way so that I could get a wrench on that to tighten it down. Kind of a tight space. But if it doesn't leak, kerosene doesn't care. Heater doesn't care either. Okay, I got the time set, got the temperature set. I just pushed the on button. And I went over here and I pushed the red button in there, and I heard fuel flow in, and it gurgled. So let's just see what we've got. I hear tinkling. I mean, it has sat for 6 years and never run as a display model. I would certainly hope it would run. There's the fan. I don't know whether you heard the tick. She's blowing air. It seems like it's blowing more air than the 30s. I never thought the fan on the 30 really blew out a lot of heat. This one, yeah, I can feel it. It seems like it's blowing quite a bit more. I can also smell the burnt dust because it's been setting forever. So it's like the first fire in the fall. You got dust on the heat exchanger and the burner, and that's got to burn off. So temperatures come up 1. I generally set the mudroom that this is in at 66, so looks like it's working. Okay, it reached 70 and then shut off, and now it's starting back down. You can see it's at 69. The kerosene line isn't leaking. The exhaust isn't leaking. One interesting thing about this 300, when it shut off, you could hear it across the room that the relay tripped. The 30s are pretty silent when they trip. Just a minor little click. This thing, it makes you turn around and wonder what happened. But anyway, for $1,100, I think that I did pretty good. And I was able to figure out how to put a 300 in place of a 30.